Hey everybody, this is Ennis.
Hey, it's Jim.
And we're Inner Solutions. Today we're making a video about how to be comfortable in your own skin. And this is a range of meaning depending on where you're coming from. But the way we mean that is just how to be comfortable in any environment, regardless of if you're out in public or alone at home or with your family or with a friend. I think that there is so much pressure to be a certain way that we kind of get lost in acting and pretending. And so this is a video about how to be authentic, how to be sincere and honest, and how that is really the way forward and kind of the path to freedom, if you will.
Yeah, I think the key word of this video is going to be self-acceptance and really destigmatizing any judgments that external people may have, and then destigmatizing any judgments that you kind of internal parts have. And that's really hard. And so when you bring some of these things forward to the surface that you maybe feel like you need to hide, or if you're a bit of a people pleaser and feel like you may need to act a certain way, it can be a process to kind of recalibrate what it feels like to just be purely genuine, speaking from a deeper, more truthful place. It's something that I've struggled with, and I'm actually in therapy as we talk about this video right now, exploring myself, because sometimes it's a practice that you can fall out of, and you can fall out of in many different ways. For me, it was being in a relationship where I was trying to keep things on an even keel, and so I was a little bit of placating my partner and a little bit of suppressing myself. And what happened was it became such a natural habit that it was just an autopilot measure. It was kind of the new norm for my mind and my body and my system. And so when I got out of that relationship and started speaking from a deeper place, I realized there was so many kind of collateral or auxiliary consequences to what I was doing. And through this journey of that recalibration I was talking about, I feel this really beautiful clarity and a lowering of anxiety. And that's why we're here to make this video, is ultimately to, one, promote that speaking from a deeper place and being just really open and honest and in whatever energy you're in, whatever emotion you're in, whatever feeling you're in, and sharing that and being aware of it. It has such a beautiful return to the clarity of your everyday life.
For me, I had a hard time knowing when I was even being inauthentic.
Definitely.
It was only in hindsight, after a moment of what I would call a letting go, where I kind of took off a layer of BS, and then I saw how I felt and how I was interacting with people. Then it was like, oh, so this is how I really am. Or maybe not how I really am, but this feels way more true and way more me. And that way that I was behaving even a day ago or a month ago feels so forced, there's so much pressure around it. And then in hindsight, you realize like, oh wow, that was fake. That was a defense mechanism, or a form of people pleasing, or some form of inauthentic dishonesty. I think that dishonesty feels like a intense word, but it doesn't have to be outright lying.
Yeah.
Dishonesty can just be not really saying what you mean. It can be the withholding as well. And so for anyone watching this thinking, I feel pretty honest, I feel pretty authentic, how do I know if I am being myself? And I'm not totally sure how to address that. There's a couple ways, I guess. One is to check how you feel in any given moment. If you're feeling restless and kind of on edge and just uncomfortable in your own skin, then that might be a sign that there's something going on. I have found that when we are speaking from a place of honesty and authenticity, and when we are behaving from that place too, there tends to be a certain calm that comes with it. It's like you can actually give yourself this freedom to express whatever you want to express. There's not as much forcing anything. And so you end up not wasting a bunch of energy. That was another big, I guess, sign that I was really micromanaging myself, that because I felt tired after interactions. If I was hanging out with someone for a while, it was exhausting. It was a real drain. And so these are little signs, that feeling of uncomfort, restlessness, energy drain, just being uncomfortable in your own skin. These are all signs that socializing or just being in the world has become this sort of facade that you've put on for survival, for approval, for avoiding rejection, for a number of different things. And as you begin to de-layer, right, kind of take off layers and layers of BS, then underneath there's this feeling of calm, confidence. There's no judgment. There's really not much self-judgment there. And there's an ability to just sort of know what's right. And we're going to come back to that statement of knowing what's right, because it ties into the second half of like, what is the conscious?
Yeah.
But do you have any thought?
I want to add to the just some of the signs. I think anxiety is a huge sign of kind of a misalignment or an acceptance. And then also just feeling uncomfortable sharing, or feeling uncomfortable with your own thoughts, or if you find yourself not wanting to face something or not wanting to talk about something that has either happened to you or a way that you feel, that's definitely a block to that kind of inauthenticity. And you can use these as signs. And again, it's not a judgment on yourself, whether you're strong, weak, or anything like that. What it is more is just information about, wow, I don't feel comfortable sharing this, this story, or this side of me, or this part of me, or I'm not comfortable. And it happens all the time. It happens in me with just, things that might be embarrassing, or things that might be like I'm back dating. And so in dating people, just trying to put forward a certain image, there's such it's rooted in anxiety. The problem with it is, like you were saying, how you realize in hindsight, because that protective measure to make you look a certain way, it's so quick and it can be so automatic that it almost, for me, it feels like I'm just on autopilot. It's happening very fast. I feel, and it can be a combination of feeling a little dissociated or a little not so present. But when I slow down and speak from this more authentic state, it's almost like I'm able to manage the anxiety better, to just say what's on my mind. And then it becomes a practice. And it becomes a practice of being present and being mindful, slowing down and answering questions properly, and slowing down and telling the cashier who asks you, how you doing today? I'm not doing so great, or maybe you're doing great, or whatever. But it's stopping that autopilot response and coming from a much more deeper place of clarity. But if you have those autopilot responses, or if you can kind of sense this in people when they're being inauthentic, if they're if they seem overly excited, if they feel like they're putting on a facade or something, you can feel that energy. And if you're coming from a place of deeper authenticity, it feels like a total miss of a connection there. It feels like a total, like, wow, this is strange. So be aware in yourself of any time that you go through something really quick, or you're in a state of anxiety, any social interaction, or even inside of you when you're doing some kind of inner explorations of thinking, coming at them with assurance, or being overly confident that, oh, this is what it is. It's like you want to be in this state of openness to explore and receive information.
That's probably the biggest challenge for me when I'm
difficult
talking to people, or getting caught in that image. There's usually this desire to, for one, say what they want to hear.
Yeah.
And then 2, kind of disregard my own opinion sometimes,
Yeah.
where I'll just tend to agree or be very agreeable in general. Sometimes I'll talk really, really fast and I'll just want to get to the point really quick. Sometimes there'll be this feeling of just judging what I'm saying. And all these are signs. And the reason we're getting so detailed on the signs and symptoms of being inauthentic is because you get really, really used to it, to the point where you don't even realize that you are.
Yeah.
It's just, as Jim was saying, years can go by where you're just kind of playing this role. And underneath it, there's this growing sense of something's not right here, and a growing heaviness and a growing weight. And I think this is why people love to get drunk momentarily.
It's a disinhibitor.
Yeah.
100%.
So,
Well, everything you were saying is rooted in anxiety. And it might not be a big anxiety, but it's like I just want to keep things on an even keel, or I'm judging what I say because I don't want to go against the grain or disappoint people. And it's all rooted in an anxiety of letting somebody down or disappointing somebody or losing a deal or something like that. And
yeah, like how do I look? What do they think of me? All this kind of stuff. It's all just an underlying issue. And so the reason why this is so important is because when you can see that you're doing these things from a place of defense, or even maybe not defense, but like proactive recovery, so that you're kind of manipulating and controlling preemptively what people think about you.
Yeah.
You are essentially just fueling and propping up this kind of wounded part of you, holding it up. And when you are able to drop the defenses, drop the attempt at control or manipulation, and just kind of show up as a very, very visceral, raw, almost vulnerable version of you, you're able to interact in a very genuine way. And 2, you just feel good. You feel like you're finally there, actually interacting with the person, actually listening. And if they ask you something, you are, pausing, thinking, saying something you really mean. And all of it, when you put it together, it creates a certain magic where you feel good and the interaction feels right. And people like or dislike you based off of you, not based off of whatever you're presenting. And so you end up forming real relationships. There's I love that one joke about the real miracle Jesus did was having a bunch of friends in his mid-30s. And
yeah,
it's just so funny how like there's a lot of people in their 30s, 40s. I mean, whatever age you are, there's this lack of real connection where people feel like they don't have real friends.
Yeah. And I love what you said. I just want to circle back to what you said. What you do reinforces what you do. So it reinforces the place it's coming from, meaning if you are coming from an inauthentic place and trying to be very controlling of the situation, you're reinforcing the anxiety that's underneath that. And, know that it's okay. Like it's not something that's irreversible. But I love what you said about the reward of it too, which is, first of all, the way you conduct yourself non-verbally inspires those around you. And there's kind of different layers to when we talk about mirror neurons and we talk about kind of just emotional inspiration that you give people. When you meet somebody who comes from a deep, kind of more authentic, more like in touch with themselves place, it naturally inspires you to do the same, because your body's like, wow. You feel the low anxiety in this person. You feel the clarity in this person. You feel the thoughtfulness or the mindfulness in this person. And our body naturally wants to be that way. And what happens when you do the other thing, and when you're coming from a fear-based place, is you're putting a layer of fog over your reality. You're reinforcing all these symptoms that can come with anxiety at the same time. And that's one of the things when I'm working with people with panic attacks or high anxiety, that's one of the first things I try to point out to them is like, well, where are you here? What are you here? Did you ask for what you want? Were you clear about, what you were thinking? Where were you coming from? Why did you say that? And we explore it because it's a really tricky thing to undo if you've been doing it for a while.
It's there's so many benefits, right? There's so many benefits. One of them that came to mind when you were describing that is when you are showing up and getting validation or disapproval, it doesn't really do anything if the person you're showing up at is not you in the first place. Right. So it's like, okay, great, I'm getting all this approval, but it's not for me.
Yeah.
And I think this is why we do it, right? Because if you get a bunch of disapproval, you can rationalize like, oh, well, they disapproved, but it's not really me that they're disapproving of. It's just this facade. Mm-hmm. When you show up as this vulnerable, rather authentic, unguarded version and you get rejected, it can hurt more. But on the other side of that, when you do get that connection of someone sees you and appreciates you and loves you, then real self-esteem starts to blossom.
Yeah. Real confidence. Pure confidence.
And it can only come from that being yourself and then being rewarded for that. Otherwise, you're just sort of reinforcing this falseness. And so the benefits range from, of course, just feeling good in general to having real connections, real legitimate relationships.
Way deeper relationships, way deeper conversations, mm-hmm. way deeper romantic relationships, way deeper just day-to-day interactions. I mean,
all the way up
across
to
the board.
Self-esteem.
Yep.
And once you start getting into self-esteem, it has all these other effects where you might leave a relationship that you've been putting up with for a long time. You might leave a job that you've been putting up with for a long time, and you might find the confidence to deal with that challenge or finally overcome a certain addiction. A lot of really amazing things can start to happen, and it all really pivots along this line of showing up as this most authentic version. Now, hopefully by now there's some clarity in terms of how do you know if you're showing up as this version? What are some signs that you're not? What are the benefits to do this? Why don't we just wrap it up with how do you practice this? What is something that you can do intentionally to draw this up?
Yeah, I think the real practice can start very small with just, well, let's start where you said and kind of doing the hindsight thing. So one of the ways I encourage clients to start is to do the repair. So let's say you catch yourself kind of on autopilot mode. Maybe you BS somebody about something, you embellish a story, you find yourself doing something inauthentic. You go back and you correct it. And it's a mighty powerful tool, and it's scary as hell. It can be really, really freaky. But for me, it's like incredibly transformative, and it reinforces the new behavior because number one, you don't want to do that because it's embarrassing. It can be embarrassing. And number two, it's a beautiful practice of slowing down. And when you deliver that truth, that's kind of the way you should have started. So you're practicing delivering, the information in a really calm, confident state, and it hurts in a beautiful way, in a really good way.
That's a great exercise. Just kind of knowing like, okay, if I do say something or do something that I can feel is not right, just go back, like reword it, like apologize even. On that note of what I just did, I kind of did like this feeling it, right? I'm doing something with my body that is so intuitive that sometimes maybe it's hard to put into words, but basically we all have this conscious, the soft, quiet voice within our gut, our inner guidance system, whatever you want to call it. There's this deep awareness of what is in alignment with you and what is just totally out of alignment with you. What is true, what is authentic for you, and what is not. And we feel this in the form of, guilt or shame or some kind of regret or some kind of, it's not always, guilt and shame can be also very separate things, but typically like if you are in a social situation and you start to say something, you kind of, the word vomit is coming out, and you're just saying things. Maybe you're name dropping, maybe you're saying things to impress somebody, maybe you're not that loud, maybe you're being quiet, and you can feel yourself wanting to participate, but you're just kind of holding yourself back. However it shows up to you, the reason it feels so bad is because it's all these internal systems trying to say, hey, this isn't right.
Right.
This isn't right for you.
Yeah. You're on the wrong wavelength. You're coming from a place of anxiety or trying to put forward a certain image or something, and that's the recalibration. It's tricky. It's like, how do you practice it? Because it's hard. Like I said, a lot of people have been doing it for so long that it really starts from, doing the repair, but also just sitting down and kind of being like looking at yourself in maybe your social interactions or maybe your life and saying, what am I doing? Like, what's going on here?
Yeah.
Like, why, if things aren't going in a way that you're kind of pleased with, there's some form of misalignment there. So what's the situation? Maybe it's with your wife or your boss or your children. And it's like, what is not clear here? What's not happening right? And sitting down and just kind of meditating on that and getting some clarity about how you feel. Because if you've been coming from a place of inauthenticity, you may be kind of convinced that, one way is the way you feel when it's really something else. So just exploring these opportunities. I think a sign we miss too is if you feel like you're grasping onto something so hard and you don't feel open to like others, opinions or stuff, that's a sign of a kind of safety blanket. And so that can be really detrimental to authenticity. Yeah.
So I guess a daily practice or intention
of checking yourself.
I got this from Adyashanti, and you said you got this from Jordan Peterson too, where it's just the practice of being honest and not lying, and they're different. And
well, yeah. So yeah, the Jordan Peterson quote is, do your best to tell the truth, or just do your best not to lie, because it's like there's layers to truth. Like your truth, the truth you're saying is relative to your understanding of yourself. And so if you feel like something's wrong, but you feel stuck, then I definitely recommend getting with a coach or a counselor.
Yeah.
To just get some support in exploring.
And that can be really hard. Like what does it mean to show up honestly? I remember I had a weird relationship with my parents for a long time. And then partly because I was very uncomfortable being myself around them.
Yeah.
And then one day I remember early 20s, I cried in front of my mom for the first time in like years.
Yeah.
Maybe, since like childhood. And what was honest in that moment was I was feeling sad, frustrated, and uncomfortable. And she would say like, "What's wrong? How are you doing?" And I would say, I'm good. I'm fine. Everything's fine." And then one day it wasn't even that I chose to be honest. It was just too much to hold it back.
Yeah.
And so it kind of broke through.
Yeah.
It was a grace that it did. And so I cried. I was like, yeah, this is how I feel. And I swear ever since that day, it was just this 180 different in the whole relationship.
Yeah, I believe it.
Whole relationship. And that in that moment, that was honesty. Yeah. It was just, I feel bad.
Yeah, I think one of the big missions that I have through doing these streams, these videos, and any other stream I do is just to promote transparency. So yesterday on a live broadcast, I was crying and just sharing how I was feeling while I was exploring it. And I get feedback like, hey, that's might be like a private thing to do. And I say, no, man, like this is I want to destigmatize and reinforce that this is happening in everybody to a certain extent, as far as like maybe not having clarity or feeling like, having anxiety and feeling like they have to people please or they can't be authentic. And it can be really hard to be honest with yourself, but also just be transparent with others. But it's so necessary for our health, like physical, spiritual, and mental health, like across the board, incredibly And with panic attacks of people with high anxiety that we deal with, clients and others, there's always some form of shame, suppression, guilt, something that they feel like they can't share or that they can't put forward because it's just the anxiety is overwhelming. They might hurt somebody's feelings. They might disappoint someone. It might crush their image, and then they don't know who they are after that. But the problem is, if you're living from that place, you're living from an anxious place. And so it's so necessary that we all practice this, transparency and working towards deeper, more authentic, because like I said, it influences and inspires those around you. And the influence is incredibly powerful. And the clarity of self is incredibly powerful.
100%. So I guess just to kind of summarize, basically so much of our problems, our struggle, our anxiety, our negative emotions are coming from a lack of transparency, a lack of honesty, a lack of authenticity. And when you begin to move through your life in this way, at first it can seem very uncomfortable. It's unguarded, it's vulnerable, it's literally taking off the layers of protection. And if you get rejected, it'll feel worse. If you don't get the feedback you wanted, it'll sting more. But generally speaking, you'll get better reactions.
Yeah, and also that sting, you'll get used to it.
Mm-hmm.
That's a real sting. You need that sting. You need to feel that because you've been avoiding that sting by being inauthentic.
Yeah.
And so once you develop that sting, that's how you develop the real confidence, which is, here I am. Like this is where I am. This is how I feel. These are the parts of me. These are my opinions. And you can't get stronger unless you go to the gym.
Yeah.
And so you have to go to the gym and be able to work that stuff out and develop.
And that as you develop that real confidence, that real self-esteem, everything really falls into place from there.
100%. I love it.
Alrighty.
Well, guys, if you have questions or comments, you can comment below. Please like or subscribe if you like what we're having. And just remember that no matter where you are, no matter how long it's been, no matter how intense the feelings are, you're never stuck. You might just need some support. For Ennis, I'm Jim. We're Inner Solutions. Thanks. And remember, guys, you can do anything.